It. Hey, I'm Sapphire. Want to hear something scary? What if there were creatures that could do your evil bidding for you? This next story comes from Arwish, whose older sister Jessie had the unfortunate honor of encountering such a spirit. One night, about 7 years ago, 18-year-old Jessie was home alone. And when one is alone, one tends to let their imagination get the best of them. So when lights started flickering and doors opened on their own, Jessie didn't think too much of it. It was probably all in her mind. Then, some of her friends decided to pay her a visit. Jessie did notice that the strange activity stopped when they were there. They stayed until about 10 p.m., and after they left, Jessie decided to watch some TV. The walls of her apartment were paper thin, and she could hear every word that her fighting neighbors were exchanging. Frustrated, she decided to get some fresh air out on her balcony. But right as she was about to place her hand on the doorknob, she heard a knock, coming from the other side of the door. Writing that off as her imagination, she opened the door and was immediately hit with a strong gust of wind. She covered her eyes to protect them from the impact. Then, she could see, in the distance, a pair of glowing red eyes. At that moment, all the lights in the house shut off. Jessie turned back inside the house, closed and locked the balcony doors, and stumbled her way in the darkness to her bedroom. She could hear children's laughter echoing throughout the halls. She locked the doors and took cover underneath her blanket. Once she had calmed down a bit, she slowly pulled the blanket from her face. And that's when she saw it. It looked like a small boy with glowing red eyes. Its mouth curled into a mischievous grin when it saw that Jessie was looking at it. She quickly pulled the covers back over her head and heard an extremely high-pitched scream. And Jessie's ears felt pain like she'd never felt before. When Jessie woke up the next morning, there was blood all over her covers, all coming from her ears. Terrified of the previous night's events, she visited her grandmother and told her everything that happened. Luckily, her grandmother knew exactly what was going on. "What you saw last night was a bakroe," her grandmother said, as she continued to explain the history of these spirits. During the West Indies sugar trade in the mid-17th century, there were mass sugarcane plantations in Suriname, a Dutch colony in South America, where Jessie's grandmother grew up. The plantation owners imported slaves from Africa, Asia, and Indonesia. The Indonesians were very spiritual, as they believed that their faith would help them get through these terrible times. When a slave died, they performed a ceremony so that the spirit could be put to rest. But sometimes, the ritual couldn't be completed, and therefore, the deceased soul became a restless entity. These are the bakroe, spirits that are roughly half the size of a human child with enlarged heads. They are half flesh and half wood and cannot feel any pain. They can be controlled by those who practiced obia, an Afro-American religion similar to voodoo or Santeria. These spell workers would use the bakroe to cause harm to someone, and since the bakroe have no will of their own, they carry out their master's wishes fearlessly. The bakroe will attempt to possess the body and mind of the victim, consume their soul, and take their life. If the victim is easily manipulated, then the bakroe will have no trouble carrying out its task. But if the victim is strong-willed, like Jessie, then they can stop it from taking over. Jessie believes that it was her ex-boyfriend who sent the bakroe after her, since he practiced obia and was convinced that she had cheated on him. Because obia is not a commonly practiced religion, Jessie has had no luck in figuring out how to completely get rid of the bakroe. To be safe, Jessie's grandmother had a protection ritual performed for her. And while that has prevented the bakroe from possessing her, it hasn't stopped them from trying. Every now and then, she still hears the high-pitched whispers, the childlike laughter. Sometimes, she catches one in the corner of her eye. It's been 7 years since she first encountered them, but strange things still happen to this day. Recently, she saw what looked like a 5-year-old boy in a hoodie staring at her house. It was raining pretty hard, so she went outside to see if he needed help. But when she looked up, he was gone. She went back inside and forgot about him, until hours later, when she saw him again, still wandering outside her house. It was pretty late at night, so she went back out to talk to him and immediately became nauseous and ran back inside, where the lights began flickering uncontrollably. Maybe that was all a coincidence, or maybe the bakroe is still after her. So, what do you think of Jessie's experience? Do you think it's possible for someone to send an evil spirit after you? And if so, would you ever use one? And even though the bakroe failed to possess Jessie, she now lives in constant fear that it will show up and succeed. So in that sense, hasn't the bakroe already taken over her mind? A very special thank you to Arwish from the Netherlands for sharing your sister's story with me, and I hope that she can get rid of the bakroe one day. If you or anyone you know have any unique paranormal experiences, I'd love to hear it. Send me a message on Instagram and I might feature your story. Like this video if it gave you the chills, and don't forget to subscribe to Snarled and check out our other videos. And if you dare to follow me, my links are in the description below. Until next time, sweet dreams.